and welcome to the Business Growth Journey podcast with me, Nick Termini. Today, we're here with an awesome guest, Blair Messina, co-founder of Wildflower Montessori. Blair, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. We're glad to have you. And first, Blair, how do we know each other?
Your children attend Wildflower. So I've gotten to be one of their teachers and then maybe another one.
Absolutely. And you have definitely helped shape them and help them grow. And it's been really cool to see. So thank you for that to get started.
Yeah, they're great. I love them.
Awesome. So Blair, first, let's talk about you. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Overland Park, Kansas. So on the Kansas side. And went to Shawnee Mission East, so over in that area, and have just never wanted to leave Kansas City. So just been here my whole life.
That's awesome. And what did you do after Shawnee Mission East?
So after Shawnee Mission East, I coached swim team for a little while and was a lifeguard at the pool and decided that working with kids was great and I enjoyed doing it and wanted to have more of like a structured environment. So kind of took my college path at UMKC into teaching. Got a job as a part-time preschool teacher at the Roland Park Community Center and then just never left the classroom.
That's awesome.
So that was, I'm 39 and that was when I was 18. So just been here.
That's awesome.
Taking it out.
Okay, so what did you get your degree in? What was your college experience like at UMKC?
UMKC was great. They work really well with students who have jobs, especially in their career path. And my original plan was to go to school to be an art teacher. And then I switched that up and decided elementary would be great. And then was working as a preschool teacher and decided maybe that age group would be really fun to work with too. So ended up with SPED, special ed, and early childhood education as my degree. And just kind of took it from there. So I've worked with ages newborn all the way through third grade and currently teach a kindergarten and first grade blended elementary class.
Okay, so with your experience in just early education, would you say that that's something for everybody, or does it take a special person to go in and work with?
Yeah.
With how many pre-K kids and kindergartners?
How many do we have?
Yeah, in general, just like a classroom.
So a classroom, typically my classroom is between 20 and 24, and would normally just be me, but I have an assistant teacher who works with me just to give us that more like one-on-one ability and more time to focus on their individual needs. Preschool is between 20 and 24 with two teachers, but it's a range of ages. So 2.5 all the way to kindergarten. And those kids kind of learn from each other and it's a little bit more self-guided. And then you've got our toddler room, which is age 1 to 2.5 with 10 and 2 teachers. And then infants can be anywhere between 9 and 12 sometimes because we have 2 rooms. And then we do between 3 and 4 teachers in that classroom. So it's a lot of kids in the building. But like once you're just used to that mass chaos all the time, it just kind of becomes your normal. My husband likes to call it organized chaos. So he's like, you're organized, but this is mass chaos to me when he walks in the building.
So would you say it's a high energy work environment?
Yeah. Like if you left the house being like, oh man, this is like, this day is just going to be, the worst. Like you can't walk into your classroom with that attitude because you'll just get eaten alive. Like you got to fake it till you make it. And most of the time you're there for 20 minutes and you're like, oh yeah, we're just going to get things done, goof around. Somebody, tells you that you're like the most important person. Or my favorite is the twins in my class who come in almost every day and they're like, your hair looks so amazing today. And I'm like, it is up in a bun. And I am so happy to hear that. Like you are the best. It is also like having like 20 of your best friends every day who just like hype you up. Like you could have the worst day and they're just like, you're doing great. Like, this is awesome. Like, You're fabulous. Yeah. Yeah. But there's a lot of crying too. Yeah.
Peaks and valleys.
A lot of crying, a lot of emotions, a lot of emotional roller coaster each day.
Yeah. So would you say, you go through to get your degree and then you started working in different daycares, right?
Mm-hmm.
What did you think, that you were prepped and ready to roll from graduation, or was it just a good entry into what you were getting into career-wise?
I would say if I didn't work in a school or that setting before I graduated, I would not have been prepared. And that's probably my biggest, like when I'm interviewing teachers, is what is your experience? Like, great, you have a degree, but what's your experience? Because I've hired teachers who have a degree and they come in, they're like, I want this much, this is my salary and I want to work these hours and I'm, qualified for this. And I'm like, hey, and I throw them into a classroom. I've had teachers last a month and say, I do not want to work with children. Like, this is way too hard. I was not prepared for this, because even in your, classes, nobody talks about a child whose parents are going through a divorce. It doesn't talk about a child who is 5, who's supposed to be potty trained and has an accident and it's ruined their whole entire day, or all of the little things that go with just being a child and needing more than just a teacher. You need someone to be able to emotionally support those children. And if you don't have that experience, then going into it can be really chaotic and not prepare you. So whenever I go to Park Hill and talk to the child development class, I always say, like, if your plan is to go into education, you better get a part-time job and you better get it at a daycare, and then you may get it at a private school maybe for a year, and then work in a different environment than that and decide what your teaching style is, and can you handle a Monday after a Friday off holiday when everyone drops their children off at 7 a.m. and none of them have had any form of structure all weekend long, and you have like at least 10 of them who are just melting down. Like, can you handle that? Because if not, you shouldn't waste 4 years, sometimes 5, getting a degree that isn't going to place you anywhere but in a school.
I'm just picturing going through all that school, all this enthusiasm towards your new career. You go to the first day of your real job in the real world, all excited, and then it's the Monday after a holiday weekend, or the
Yeah.
day after a holiday weekend, and you just get absolutely obliterated with, young
The day after Halloween.
Yeah.
Day after Halloween.
Just getting pixie sticks and loaded up on sugar.
Yeah. You're like, where did you even come from? It's like 9:30. I marked you absent. Their parent just opens the door and slowly pushes them in. You're like, are you in your pajamas still? Like, what's happening?
This could quickly turn into like a stand-up comedy act with all the things you've seen, I'm sure.
We joke around that, like, we'll have a podcast one day and it'll just be like Sarah and I telling stories, and then it'll be like, and if this story sounds like you, call in and we'll tell you if it was you. We'll tell you if it was you. Like,
oh man, you could consider this podcast my calling if you got any.
Yeah, I'd have to think of some.
Oh, that's great.
For the boys.
Okay, so once you got out of school, you had your first couple jobs. What was your path? Were you trying to grow within the companies you were in, or did you always have your eye on starting your own company?
No. So I had my first teaching job, which was part-time, and then I moved to another school that had a Montessori it wasn't traditional Montessori, but it was a Montessori structure. And I actually stayed there for 15 years. So, like, first, kind of big girl teaching job. It was my last year of college, finished college, and then they were basically like, hey, we love what you do. Will you oversee the infant and the toddler program? And I'm like, I've never worked in an infant and toddler room. I've only worked with preschoolers and older. So, like, but great. I love babies. I've babysat before, and let's do this. So I spent a good portion of time in the infant room as a teacher, and then, but also as the director, and then in the toddler room as a teacher, but also as the director. So that really kind of led me to the path of, I love teaching and being in the classroom, but I also like being a director, because then you can go in and support those teachers and you know what they're going through because you've personally gone through it in the classroom.
In the city, probably.
Yeah, it was, this route.
Okay.
But then I slowly the schools that I worked for, they had 2 schools, and then they grew, they opened another school, and then they grew and opened another school. And as that progression happens, and not like in a negative way, but you start to water down the product, and you start to not be able to, you have to trust the people who are running your schools more. So you have to trust that these people are doing exactly what you want them to do at the schools and all of that. And that wasn't necessarily happening. And if you know me, I am one of the nicest, most generous people. But when it comes to my job, I'm kind of black and white. Like, if you can't do this job, we're paying you to do this job. These parents are trusting you with their children. And if this isn't a good fit, then what do you want to do? Like, let's figure that out and help you on your way out the door to a different career path. So I kind of became this person that the owner of the schools would send out to, and this is what Sarah says, because she was a teacher in a classroom, so she knew what everyone was saying behind my back. I would go out and fix it. So if I was at your school, it meant somebody was probably getting fired, or somebody was not doing their job and needed some extra training. So that kind of just became my job, and I got to be in the classroom, but I also got to, work with a lot of different people and a lot of different kids and build a lot of relationships. And the end goal was to help the director or help the teachers understand how to make their classrooms better, or to have an outside perspective of why things weren't working. And then I stayed there for 15 years, and they sold, and it went from being a really small business with that warm feeling of like, you can ask for a day off and it'll get granted to you, and not, well, you're employee number 757 and you don't have any vacation time. And it's like, well, I have a name, and I also have a family, and I need to take a day off. So yeah, we kind of that's where we decided, Sarah and I, to make a transition.
And Sarah is your co-founding partner at Wildflower?
Yes. So Sarah is my co-founder. Sarah is also, we went to high school together and have been friends for, I don't know how many years. I mean, since we were 15 and 16. So we have always just had a really good relationship and a good friendship. And she taught at the school that I worked at. And when they made that transition to corporate, we were like, we're not going to survive here. This is not like, we're 5 minutes late every day. We're not towing the corporate line, basically. It was more about the kids. It was more about the classrooms. And at some point we knew we were going to be on the chopping block, because we just couldn't follow those corporate rules. So Sarah, I don't know what got into her to do it, but she basically looked up on LoopNet, spaces, and she was like, oh, this one's really cute, we should go look at it. And I was like, you're crazy. You're crazy. We cannot open a school. Sarah was pregnant. I had a 2-year-old. I was like, you're insane. So we went home and talked to our husbands about it, because we knew when you open a business, you're not going to get paid. So we were like, how do you guys feel about us throwing all of our chips in and seeing what it would take, I guess, to open a school? And we just got really lucky, to be honest with you. Everything fell into place the way it was supposed to fall into place. Sarah's husband's an accountant. My husband is an electrician. I had been running multiple schools and programs for at least 10 years. And Sarah loves being a preschool teacher. She loves the infant room. She loves the toddler room. She loves being a teacher. She's fabulous at it. And so we were like, I guess we could do this. We have all of the we have these admin basically that can help us. Ryan does the numbers, Ananda fixes everything. I make sure that things don't burn down, and Sarah makes sure that everybody's okay. and that everything's functioning in the classrooms when I'm not able to. So yeah, we found this space at Burlington Creek and we went and looked at it, and it was tiny and the rent was very expensive. And I was like, no, we're good. We'll go work for other people at other schools. And I did a couple of interviews at large corporate schools and was like, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. This is crazy.
Okay, Blair. So you're literally explaining a crossroads that I've seen a lot. I've gone through where it's like you're at the point of, you're not happy with the way things are going. You have an idea of where you want to go and what you want to do, and all of a sudden the team magically appears around you, and you're like, okay, I don't know, and then it's that why, how does all this keep coming together? And it's almost like a path that just keeps forcing you through, like, yeah. And then it's terrifying is what it sounds like to you. And I know I've gone through it and seen it in a lot of different ways, but where there's something that just keeps nudging you forward, and then each door opens a new level of curiosity where it's like, oh, we could do this, and then that's really where growth mindset kicks in of like, well, I need to learn this. I know how to do, as a director before, I understand the hiring, firing, people development. I understand the job. So you've got all these components, and now we've got, our co-founder that's kind of like the yin and yang personality wise, right? Which is a beautiful blend. And then you got an accountant and you're a person that can fix any issues that come up. And then it's like, it's starting to make sense. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, are we really doing this? What are we doing?
Yeah. And there was like a point in time where, so like when we originally had looked at the building, we didn't know that they were trying to sublease it. And like, this is our first time like looking into like leases and like all of that side. Like I'd never dealt with that side of things because the owners of the school I worked at, they built buildings. And so, I never saw a lease or at least a commercial lease. So we found a really great broker, and she's a saint. And she was like, well, they're subleasing it, so we got to be really careful about this. And then she reached out to the landlord, and they were like, well, we didn't approve a sublease. And Sarah and I had put our 2 weeks notice in at our teaching jobs. Sarah was 5 months pregnant, and we get this email that says, we didn't approve a sublease, and the deal is just, it's squashed. You can't have the space. And I'm panicked because I'm like, I now need to figure this out. So I went to the director of the school, who was a friend of mine too, and was just like, Sarah and I, we need our jobs. And I'm going to be honest with you. The goal is not for us to keep our jobs here. The goal is for us to open a school. We've started this. We've had a hiccup. We need to figure something out. But I wanted to be honest because I've been in that position as a director. And if you have this wonderful teacher that you put it back in a classroom, and then in 6 months, they're leaving, and you don't have a plan to replace them, you're going to have a lot of upset parents. So I was honest, and I was like, I will stay. I will run this class. I will train any teachers you need me to train. I will basically do whatever you want me to do with a smile on my face. But Sarah needs her job back too. And so she was like, no problem. Got you covered. It was like 2 months later, the landlord called our broker and was like, yeah, that building is now vacant and we can lease it. And then we started that process. So again, it all just kind of fell back into place. And we were like, and we looked at so many buildings that I was like, oh yeah, we can polish this up. And Ananda would find like something wrong with the electrical or, something. And he'd be like, no, this is a money pit or something like that. So then, we leased the space we have now. And it was terrifying. We had, the summer, because we opened in October. So we had the summer to go in, and what we thought was a move-in ready building was not a move-in ready building. I mean, the refrigerators had been left over a year of no one cleaning them out, and the electricity had been off. So like we got in and we're like, oh, it's easy peasy, and ended up spending 3 months remodeling the space, and we couldn't afford to have anyone help us. So it was me, Sarah, and our 3 children. One of them was an infant. And then you had Gray and Bella, who were 2, 3, and 2, who I feel like every time we turned around, someone had a caulk gun out or screwdrivers, making a bigger mess. Like, I remember looking at Sarah and being like, I will get a night job to pay for someone to watch our children while we remodel this place. And she was like, we can't afford it.
Yeah. So, that's the challenge that everybody gets into. You basically group everybody together on this because you have this beautiful vision of where you want to go, how you're going to get there. You have all these great plans mapped out, and then it takes so much longer than you actually think it will in the beginning. And I mean, you could literally always just add a couple weeks, months, year, because there's always something going to pop up.
Yeah.
Right. And so in touring that, so you guys had signed your lease, and then you're in doing the grunt work to get it cleaned up, to get to a point that fit your standards to open your school. And then how long did that take after signing on the dotted line?
So we signed the lease in July, and then Sarah was on maternity leave, so that helped. Yeah, that helped. I worked up until August and then put my notice in, and then we opened on October 30th. So, and we only had 3 months before we had to start paying rent. So, and we asked the landlord, and they're like, no, we don't care. We don't care about you. Like, we're a corporation in Chicago. Like, you're just, a tenant to us. So we're like, all right, we got to fill this building up. So yeah, we were full. We opened October 30th, and we were full by the end of December in the preschool classroom, infant room, and toddler room, which it was a small school. But then we looked at each other and we were like, well, if someone gets pregnant and has a baby, we have no space for them. We have 3 infant spots. Like, what do we do? So that was a challenge. And then the gym, they called us and they were like, yeah, we can't pay our rent, so we're just going to stop paying it. And eventually our space is going to go, up. And we wanted you guys to know first. And we're like, okay, cool. Well, we don't have any money. So we just got to play it safe and stay here.
Yep. Man. Okay. So you opened in October, we're full by December. What did you do to start to get enrollment?
We did several open houses where, we have an open door policy as it is. So like parents come and kind of go depending on like, obviously like interrupting times of like nap time and things like that. But we just spent a couple of weekends, like once a month, and planned an open house where parents could come in, their kids could see what the, structure was like. They could talk to us and see, what we had to offer. And we did a lot of Facebook was a big one. Like if you're in mom groups, there's always someone posting, hey, is there any schools that are great? Who would you recommend? So we just asked the parents that we had enrolled, you obviously love having your children here. Do you mind when someone posts commenting and recommending our school? So awesome. That we didn't have to really advertise. Obviously, we were trying to keep expenses as low as possible. So we just tried word of mouth first and posted some like the neighborhood pages. And really, the parents at Wildflower are so great about referring their friends and recommending it and talking about school that we haven't really ever advertise. The need for childcare is huge in the Northland. I mean, it's huge everywhere. But when you have a parent who runs into someone at the park and they're like, oh, where does your kid go? And they're like, they go here. Oh, I've had all 3 of my children there and they've been there for 7 years. And, a parent's like, oh, okay. And then we just kind of grew from there and got a waiting list.
That's incredible. So in this journey, like what are all the things that you had to learn from going from director to then opening to then cleaning, renovating, opening, up and getting in Facebook groups and open houses? How did you guys have to alter your game plan to be able to continue to move forward?
To grow. I mean, we had to figure out, me being the director, Sarah and I were both in a classroom in the beginning. And I love being in a classroom, but then that means that all of the admin stuff gets done at home. So it was a lot of me working after school, and Sarah doing the same. And Ryan has a full-time job as an accountant. So everything he does is, out on the side and after work. So we had to figure out how to like balance that because the burnout is so quick and so fast.
Yes.
And Sarah and Ryan didn't plan to have any more kids. They decided, we're good with our 2, but we wanted to have another child. And I was like, how am I going to take a maternity leave? How am I going to do all these things if I don't have a solid team? So then that's when we're like, okay, now we need to start understanding how to build our team. And the one thing that I learned from working at the school that I did before was that you have to be able to train everybody in your building to be able to do your job when you step out. Obviously, there are certain things that like only I, make the calls on and things like that. But if I need to step out of the building, I need to have a team that's like, oh, we got this. We can put a Band-Aid on this until she gets back, and then we'll sort it out together. So then that meant starting to really put more trust in our teachers and trial and error. Some of those teachers that we invested 2-3 years in decided, I'm going to move, or I'm going to take a career path that's different because I just don't want to teach anymore. So it was figuring out, how do you retain your staff and how do you entrust some of those like really delicate things with those people and not worry about it when you're on vacation. I mean, vacation didn't come I think actually like I had a child before I had a vacation. But it was just like figuring out how to not have me and Sarah be the only ones running everything. So that was a big step for me because I am a little bit of a control freak and like things to be a certain done.
Well, and you bring up an excellent point of, a lot of business owners, especially at startups, it's your grit and ability to get in and do things and do them yourself that help get the company off the ground, right? Like it takes all the fuel you got to get the jet up in the air. Now, once it's up in the air and above the clouds, it goes a lot smoother. But it takes everything to get there. So, like challenges I've seen in a lot of companies, especially with owners and leaders, executives, and so on, is, when you start out with a smaller company and you grow exponentially, being able to go from the doer to then the manager, then the leader. And it's exactly what you're saying, where you've got to be able to train and develop the people so that you trust them to be able to execute on what their role is, which means then you've got to be able to clearly define what is their role, right? Like what is doing a good job here and what is not working here. And so, kudos to you guys for being able to do that so quickly because, while you're doing it, it does not seem quick, but that really is a pretty fast turnaround to, the growth that you guys had. And that's got to be one of the main contributors is being able to go from scrubbing the moldy, refrigerator, doing everything to being able to develop people and trust them. And in the beginning, it's a dream of a vacation. It's not scheduled, right?
No. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And no, people don't really see. They see where you are now after all the grit and toughness and working through the what at times may seem like an impossible journey, right? Like, oh, here's a great space. Oh, it's subleased. Oh, we don't want to do this. Like all the different things, but you continue to forge ahead. So that's incredible. At what point, like as you were growing, did you realize, we need to develop our people, we need to have our systems, we got to have it so we can leave and not worry about the building burning down?
So we opened in 2017, and then we expanded and took over the space on the opposite side of our playground. So we went from 3,000 square feet and had 40 kids to adding on to that building and taking over 4,500 square feet, where we went from, if you count Sarah and I as employees, having 6 employees to having 22 employees, because we went from having one preschool classroom, one baby room, and one toddler room to having a grade school classroom, 2 infant rooms, 2 toddler rooms, and 3 preschool classrooms. So at that point, it was a design build space too. So it's like, I mean, we did all the design, we hired the contractors, we did all that. And then it was time to hire teachers who wanted to, have a career with us, and we look for long term. So the interview process was a lot and a long time. And then we couldn't give some of these teachers set dates because construction got pushed back, and then we didn't get a permit. And so we're like, oh, we're opening in October of the next year. And then it was November. And so we lost a few employees because they had to take other jobs or other opportunities. So we started building this team, and just slowly but surely, it was like, I need to be in every classroom a little bit every day. I need to give every teacher support. Sarah's in her classroom and she's in there supporting the rest of the preschool teachers. And I'm floating around doing the rest while doing enrollment, while doing all those other things. So we actually asked one of our good friends who we've been friends with since high school. Sarah's been friends with Aaron since first grade. We were like, your daughter goes here. Do you want to work here? Because you know the insides of Sarah and I's brain. And she basically came in and just took over all of the things that she would see that we just couldn't get done.
Wow. So she came in.
Aaron's like, everybody thinks that Aaron's an owner. And sometimes I like that because I'm like, Aaron, yeah, they're like the third owner. And I'm like, yes, if you have a question, go ahead and ask Aaron that question. But she essentially is like, she knows how our brains work, and she knows how I like things and how Sarah likes things. And she's not afraid to make a mistake and then go, okay, so how do we learn from this mistake? So seeing Aaron go into that position and make mistakes was like, now we have this third person to help support us. And it was just more about, how do we get everyone feeling comfortable in their classrooms to not need us all the time and be able to make mistakes and then come and say, hey, I had this conversation with this parent and I don't know that it went as well as I wanted it to. And then we say, okay, what did you say? Have that conversation with me as a parent. And then I'm going to give you feedback. I'm not going to go fix it for you, but I want you tomorrow to address that parent, and here's how I want you to do it. So starting to be able to give those teachers the tools, but them also knowing if you screw it up, I'll take the blame. They can be mad at me and I'll be like, I told her to say that. I'm trying to teach her. I'm trying to get her to be comfortable. She's amazing in the classroom, but doesn't feel comfortable talking to parents. So it was figuring out also what everybody needed support in each classroom, and then going in and helping guide them and teach them over, the year. And a lot of our teachers have been with us for almost since we opened. So about 50% of our staff has been with us for over 5 years.
That's awesome. So the training development aspect is an area that most, startups, smaller companies, and then quickly growing companies struggle, because they can't figure out how to, one, give the leeway to make mistakes, right? Because that's part of learning. Not making mistakes, you're not growing. And it's just tuition, right? If you learn from it, grow, then it's a beautiful thing. And then being able to recognize, okay, here's how our roles got to change. And what's cool in you telling your story is being able to hear the evolution of how your role has changed, right? It started out with you as a lifeguard, then teacher, and then director, and then being able to grow as an owner of, from scrubbing refrigerators. I keep going back to that because that's where it starts for most business owners, is something's done. I got to get it done.
Yeah.
To then be able to go to the next level to develop the people, which is awesome. So now you've got a competent staff that you have trust in and feel good about. From there, where were your sights to continue to grow your organization?
So, we had decided that a big part of our school is not watering down the product. So we had talked about, before we opened Wildflower, I had decided that one way or another, I was getting out of the school I was working at before. And if it didn't work out that Sarah and I could open a school right away, then I would start consulting. And I had put the plan together. I had already started kind of consulting for some other schools. And the plan was I would consult until we could open a school. So I took on a couple of clients. And basically, my goal was that I wouldn't consult for any large corporate schools. It'd be more of like a teacher like myself or a teacher like Sarah, who's decided I want to open up a small school, which I think now people are calling them more like micro schools. So, like, you have a teaching philosophy and parents love it, but the corporate school you work for has now made the decision to purchase this curriculum, and now you got to teach this, and you can't teach what you want to anymore. So my goal was that we would help smaller schools open, and we would help them do what they needed to do, get the financing, go in and help them with their staffing. And that's how we would, make the money to open a school. Well, we ended up opening Wildflower, and then everything was content and wonderful and nice. And it was 2019. And I was like, well, why don't I just kind of dial it back down into consulting, and we'll take on some clients, and Sarah can do the curriculum and we can help them. And so we took on a client and started helping them open up their school. And they're two teachers that we used to work with, and they have a great school. It's in the inner city. They meet the needs of the opposite, demographic that we meet the needs for up here in the Northland. And so we kind of just work together. And that was our goal. So that was our goal, was to help other schools open up, because what we do at Wildflower is Wildflower. We weren't afraid that someone was going to like steal it from us, or we wanted other schools to open up so that parents have a choice of where they want their children to go, and they don't just have to go to a school because, and have that curriculum be for their children just because that's the school by them and that's the school they can afford. They should have more choices. But then COVID hit, and I happened to be pregnant, and we were just at this point where, like, financially we were all comfortable. And we were really lucky in the beginning because we all four have the same financial outlooks. So we decided that we just wouldn't pay Sarah and I until we were a debt-free business. So we were a debt-free business within the first 2 years. And so we're like, all right, like, we can now like start helping other people open schools, and like our teachers are great. And then COVID hits, and it's March, April, and everything around us is shutting down. And I'm due in June at this point, and everyone's panicking, and everyone's like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Nobody was saying, hey, here's all this money that you can just use to keep your school open. So we had to go through that whole process, which is like a whole podcast in itself, of like, how did you survive COVID?
Oh, man. Well,
how many parents did you have to explain to that you are not a doctor and you do not know, and that this is your first pandemic that you're living through right now? Like, I cannot tell you how many parents would be like, well, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know, Susan. I'm living this like you are. Like, our last pandemic was, I think, the Spanish flu, and none of us were alive. Like, I'm taking this day by day.
Yeah.
And so that maternity leave that I was so looking forward to, because I was a director of a school when I had Bella, and my maternity leave consisted of me being home with my computer, answering emails, and going in when I needed to for 5 weeks. My maternity leave turned into me managing COVID and managing a pandemic and managing how we were going to take care of 125 families. And it was just chaos, to be honest with you. Like, you just walked into work every day smiling, and then you would just go home and cry and be like, I'm so tired, and I like don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. Yeah. So it was just living in this constant waiting game of what to do. And are we doing the right thing? Are we not doing the right thing? So we made it through COVID, and that must have like made me think that we should open another school. I don't know why. I think I might have still had like pregnancy brain or something. But we made it through COVID, and we did it well. We did it gracefully, and we did it well. And we took care of our families. We took care of our parents, and our parents did that in return. All of those families they became a very large community and a unit. And there was a building a few blocks from my house that used to be a childcare center. and it had closed and it was overgrown, and it's a beautiful space. And so I was like, I'm just gonna like send Jamie an email just to see. And Sarah and Ryan and Nanda, no one had a clue. I did it all like behind their backs, because my thought was like, I've always been the type of employee where I do it and ask for forgiveness later, because 99% of the time, like, it works itself out and it's fine. So I sent an email to Jamie and met with the bank, who it was in foreclosure, and was like, here, what are you offering? Can I see the building? I walked through it. I made a whole checklist of all the things that were wrong with it that we'd have to spend money on, which I underestimated that a little bit.
Wait, who does? Quick question. So after navigating COVID, being pregnant, having your second child, and then did things just start to settle down? We're like, oh, this is easy now after dealing with all that. We need something else to continue to launch forward. Is that kind of what it was of the next challenge, the next?
So, I mean, if you asked like Sarah or like maybe like my therapist, they'd probably be like, I was trying to find a project to divert my time. So also in between then, my second child, I noticed that he was just different and his eyesight was different. And I have very poor eyesight. So I was like, oh, maybe he needs glasses. So we kind of had to start that project during 2020. And me being a person who's like, there's always a solution. We can always fix this. We can always fix that. You couldn't see a doctor. I mean, we were on so many waiting lists that only one parent, I went to every single appointment alone. They would not even allow in the room. Even when the genetics doctor was like, your child's blind. I'm sitting there in this room alone because only one person can come in, even though we live in the same house. It was just silly. And so during that time, I think I was looking for a project that I knew that I could succeed at, probably is probably what my therapist would say. She'd be like, you were looking for something to succeed and help other people. So when I looked at this building, the building is big enough to have 20 more kids in it. But instead, we decided that we would open that building, and part of that building has a therapy room. So it has a therapy room that would be used for therapists who would be seeing children whose parents can't afford therapies, can't afford Braille, can't afford O&M, can't afford speech, OT, you name it. So that was kind of our next project. So it was like two projects in one, kind of. I presented it to them because I knew it had to make money. Because if I was going to open up a non-for-profit that doesn't make any money, and I want to give all the money that we bring in away, basically immediately, how do we come up with funds to do that? So I basically crunched all the numbers and put it all together, and then was like, this is what we can offer on the building. This is, the loan we'll need to take out. This is what we'll need to do for this. And Wildflower purchased the building as an investment too. So then that investment will always give back to Wildflower and always help support families on scholarship, always help, any of the families for Wildflower Wellness. And then as we opened that school, then Wildflower Wellness started to become an actual thing, instead of just this like vision that I had to give back to our families in our community.
So could you talk more about just what Wildflower Wellness is?
So a little bit. So insurance is great if you have a child with like a speech delay, but if you have a child who is deaf, then your speech, you only get a certain amount of sessions. You don't get deaf education covered, at least in Missouri. And it's the same thing with children who are blind or visually impaired. So unless you are going through the school district, your child doesn't get services. So how do you continue to push your child forward and give them the resources they need, and let them stay alongside their peers if you can't teach them Braille, or that they can't learn to use their cane? So basically, we decided that we would create this non-for-profit and do fundraisers and make things accessible with all the connections we have. that's kind of one of my things is like, if all of these connections that I have with all these families that I've taught their children, many of them are willing to give back, whether it be financially or their time. Many of them are like, you helped me raise my child. Of course, I want to give back. I can do this, I can do that. And then it just grew our community even more too, so that Wildflower wasn't just all the families inside of Wildflower that have gone there. It's anybody who wants to be a part of Wildflower Wellness, anybody whose children have interacted, done, lived in the same neighborhood as other kids who go to Wildflower. It kind of started to grow that community. So what Wildflower Wellness does is we focus on the things that aren't covered. So we're going to help guide you through, like, have you checked with your insurance? Have you checked with the school district to see if this is available for you? Let's reach out to this organization that offers this, so that our resources go to filling in all those gaps. Right now, we're really focusing on making skateboarding accessible and gymnastics, which has been really cool for us because my oldest skateboards and is not afraid of anything. And so her brother, who is completely blind with a little bit of light perception, was like, I want to skateboard. So he's getting ready to turn 5, and he was on a skateboard at the age of 1. And so we were like, I don't know how to teach a blind kid how to skateboard. And my husband has skateboarded his whole life, and he's like, I can try. So we just kind of started piecing that together, because sports for kids who have disabilities is very minimal, and it's a lot of children grouped together. So if you have a child who's autistic, chances are you're going to be put on a special Olympic soccer team or Down syndrome or all of those things. But there's other sports that they can participate in and it be inclusive. Skateboarding is one of them, and gymnastics is one of them. And so we've kind of started using our resources to lean more into that. And then that allows those children to be more empowered and have better physical skills and succeed more. And then any parents who do need help with like financial assistance with therapies, we get them connected with a therapist, and we do that too. But yeah, gymnastics is great. We work with Edge Gymnastics in Riverside. Riverside's been great. Edge gives scholarships to children who have disabilities, and then we provide therapists. So if they need a therapist to go to gymnastics with them, then they call us, and then we pair them up with a therapist, or we pay for their therapist. And then skateboarding, we just partnered with Riverside, and Riverside has the first adaptive for blind and visually impaired skateboarders skate park that they just opened, and is pretty exciting.
Wow. So could you talk about how that process came together, what you had to learn, all the different, resources and things that had to all meet to be able to bring first skate park like that to life?
So that was an interesting process, because you typically don't think you're going to be met with any, like when you're like, oh, I want to make this accessible to a child with a disability, you don't think you're going to be met with well, I don't really think that's a good idea. And I was like, we have the city of Riverside, who we had an event in October of 2023 called Grind for the Blind. And Riverside had already been in the talking basically about redoing their skate park. So I was like, this is great. Like, we'll have an event with just visually impaired and blind children, and we'll show everybody like this is totally possible. But we need to modify the skate park a little bit, their design that they had planned. So we had this event. We had over 30 families of blind and visually impaired kids. And the mayor of Riverside's great, but she was like, you want me to let you use the park, and a bunch of blind and visually impaired kids are going to get on skateboards? I was like, yeah, it'll be great. And she's like, you're insane. And I was like, a little bit. And so we had this event, and then we kind of like came back, checked in on it, and the parks department was like, would you like to be on the committee so that we can make this an inclusive park? And they didn't know that it would be the first park. They were just like, this is so cool, let's do it. And so, they've got this chunk of change that they're throwing at the skate park. And it happened to be that they also asked my husband to be on the committee to kind of make some choices and decisions on the skate park. And then a friend of ours who works for a skate park design company, they got the bid for it. So we were all working together, but then there were other people on the committee. So once we started getting into, the logistics of it which I'm not really good at, like skate tricks and like all that stuff. Somebody's like, oh, well, if we make this obstacle this length, how is that going to affect sighted people? And I'm like, excuse me? Do you think that like we're making this park just for blind and visually impaired? He's like, well, you want to make sure that normal skateboarders can skate there too. And I'm like, they can. Like, that's what this is about. It's about making an inclusive space.
Yeah.
Riverside, their committee was like, we there's a way to do this for both. So it was just this back and forth of, me having to explain how this is still going to work and be, work for a sighted person, which is silly. You can see, so you can see what's coming up. Like, it's not hard. But we were able to put in tactile graphics. So there's stamped concrete that goes around the park. So if you're a cane user, you would basically, as soon as you hit one of those spots with your cane, you're about to go over an edge. So it's like a safety kind of marker. And then we put in high visibility paint around the edges for visually impaired people or skaters. And then the braille tiles actually go in this week. So that will be really exciting. They are ceramic tiles that go on the sides of skyscrapers. A friend of my husband's is a ceramics artist and designs skyscrapers and was like, let me do these tiles. And I was like, cool, awesome. Like, let's do it. So there's around the edges of the park. If you go there now, you'll see there's like these block insets. And in those insets will go these bright blue tiles with white braille that's raised up. So if you're blind, you can go over and touch it. But if you're sighted, it sparks that conversation of like, what does it say in braille? Or, why is there braille? And then there's a tactile map that will go in. So if you're blind, you use tactile maps and to navigate where you are before you enter the physical space. And then I told Riverside, they were like, this is so cool. Like, what other parks have this? And I was like, none. This is the only one. You guys kind of put all your eggs in a basket with me. And this is it. This is what we got.
Well, that's really cool though, because you're exactly right. It'll also spark curiosity and questions and more conversation around.
Yeah, I mean, we have a huge. I think until I had a blind child, I don't know that I noticed ever seeing a blind person in Kansas City, like maybe once in my life. And since having a blind child, it's like I see blind people all the time. And it's a big community. And we have a huge community in Kansas City of blind and visually impaired children. And North Kansas City School District is the top school district in the state of Missouri for blind and visually impaired education. So it just kind of sparks that conversation too of like, how do we make all of our environments, our parks, sports, things like that, inclusive to someone who's visually impaired or blind?
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, this your whole story is about getting in and figuring it out and keeping to move forward to grow and help everybody else, right? Like that's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of crying in my car on my lunch break, being like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so tired. How am I going to do this?"
Oh man, I mean that's another thing is how many hours are in your days? Most people have 4. If you figured out a way to have 40-hour days with all these different activities and things you have going on?
No, I mean, it's typically, I'm at the school 40 hours a week at least. And then in the evenings, I work a lot and on the weekends a lot. But also it doesn't seem like work when you are doing something that you love and it's your passion. And it's like one of those jobs where you can goof around and like hang out with your 20 best friends who are under the age of 5 and get your work done, but also be like, oh, 20% of my day, I kind of just like messed around. Like, oh, I just went to the baby room for a little bit and just like held a baby on my lunch break and was like, oh, this is great. So like, it's like we've created this environment that I would say almost all of our teachers agree, you come to work and it's a job, but it's also like you're coming to work to like hang out with your friends and hang out with your co-teachers and teach kids stuff, but also, enjoy what you're doing during the day. So I kind of think of it as like less of work as more of just kind of like doing what I love during the day. and in
That's
the
awesome.
evenings.
I mean, it sounds like it started out as a job, grew into, owning your own company. And now it's just seems like it, from what everything you're saying and everything that I've seen that you have going on, is it's grown it's bigger than you now. Like it's almost like a calling where it's, you just keep going forward, and all of these new cool adventures keep showing up that you're part of other people's experience now to help them grow and live a better life, and in ways that maybe in the beginning you didn't set out to do, but it just keeps expanding and growing. I mean, right?
We're trying to not grow anymore like Wildflower. The school will never grow anymore, but even though you keep trying to tell us to. Yeah, Wildflower Wellness, it's almost like I tell Sarah this all the time. I'm like, we have so many resources. It would almost be selfish not to make all those connections and those resources meet with each other. Like you have friends who do these things, who are speech therapists or occupational therapists, or they're artists, or they're photographers, and they're like, I want to give back to my community. And you're like, oh, I've got a great plan for you. We have a friend who's a photographer who I'm like, would you ever do some just free sessions with some of the families who get services through Wildflower Wellness? If you're budgeting for your child's therapy, when was the last time you did family photos? I have a friend who's a massage therapist, and she's like, I will donate 2 massages a month. And it's like, as a parent of a child with special needs, when was the last time you did something for yourself? And so it's like those little things, and it's like, utilize those resources, because otherwise you're just like throwing away those opportunities to give back to your community through the relationships that you've built, getting to know people.
This is beautiful because it's just a total abundance mindset where the more you've grown, worked hard, and then success started to come together, then it was just, okay, great. Now we can continue to share and grow.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome stuff.
Yeah. I don't want to work that many more hours, but I can give you the number of someone that can help you. Like I can pass this, like it's kind of that, just like utilizing, everyone's resources. It's not about who's going to climb to the top first. It's about like helping each other climb to the top so that we can all benefit, at the end of the day, and like sharing our resources.
Yep.
Otherwise you're going to be exhausted. You're going to be so tired. You're going to hate your job, and you're going to want to quit.
Well, and you brought up, like in the very beginning, talking about burnout, right? And it's real. And when you're like in the grind of the very beginning, and you're a little freaked out, and you're working as hard as you can, burning both ends of the candle, it's hard to see up. You got your head down, and as you've developed people, you've grown your company, then you've started Wildflower Wellness, and you're able to have your head up and use your resources to help others. I mean, the greatest resource is being resourceful. And so then you get better at leveraging your time and the people around you to create, like, these are incredible experiences. If you're creating the first ever skate park for visually impaired, I mean, that's incredible, right? Like
Yeah.
this is, I mean, that's cool. Just because it starts with an idea and interest, and it's like, huh, could we do that? And throughout this entire podcast, you've told the story of, hey, here's something maybe we could do. And then all of a sudden the band starts coming together, and at first kind of awkward. Not everybody's playing the same beat and the same song. And then, you keep working at it, and everybody gets better. And then you know how to feed off each other. So this is cool stuff, Blair.
Yeah. I am not one to be like in the spotlight. And so like the skate park has been kind of weird because everybody's like, oh, you did this. And I'm like, I just helped do it. Like I just like orchestrated it and told everybody where they needed to be and what they needed to do. And then, like asked, like I'm one that's not afraid to be like, hey, in 2nd grade, I lent you that pencil. So now I need you to donate this to this event to help these children get the.
Man, that freshly sharpened number 2 is coming back around. That's funny. Okay, so what's the future look like now that you've got your Wildflower in the Parkville area. Then you have your second Wildflower off Berry Road, Wildflower Wellness. What's the future look like?
I mean, my youngest is starting public school, which is a big journey for us because my oldest stayed with me at Wildflower and then transitioned to public school because we just go up to second grade. I'm a big advocate for public school. So my feeling is that I will start participating more in advocacy for public schools and the resources and helping parents. Being someone that at Wildflower Wellness that a parent can reach out to and be like, hey, I don't know that all of my IEP hours are getting clocked or my child's getting this, like, what should I do? And kind of helping guide them, since that's what I've been doing with Luca, is working with North Kansas City on, making sure all of his hours are met and making sure he has all the resources and making sure that all the laws are followed that are put in place for visually impaired and blind children. So kind of more transitioning to working with those families who don't have all the resources that we do and making sure that they have those resources. It's why we didn't decide to have Wildflower go above second grade, because if we, as educated, parents who are more financially stable than some of the, the families in our neighborhoods, if we pull our kids out of public school and we put them in private, then we're just pulling out all the advocates for those families who don't know what's going on or don't understand what's going on. So I kind of plan to do a little bit more of that and start getting a little bit more into the public school system of like helping that and bringing to light some of the flaws and things that, these kids need that can be provided for them as much as I possibly can. Obviously, like, I'm not going to run for school board, believe me. I'm not trying to get like that deep into the politics, just more of like an outside resource for those parents to reach out for, that I could go to an IEP meeting with them and I would have all the information that they need and be that support person so they don't feel like they're missing out on something in their child's education.
Awesome. Well, Blair, this has been incredible. You sharing your story. To wrap up, is there any message that you'd like to give to anybody that's either starting a company or has a child that's visually impaired or special needs, or is looking to start a nonprofit? I mean, you've done so many different things. What would be any words of wisdom or advocacy for people that are trying to figure out how to do some of the similar things?
I would say, as like a small business owner, I would say our biggest success and why we have such great staff retention is we take care of our staff. And that's the thing, is that like, if you're opening a small business and you plan on having employees, you need to put your employees first. And I say that coming from someone who, when COVID hit, we both families, we drained our savings to make sure that our staff had checks every single week and that the parents at our school were taken care of. If you don't take care of your staff's not going to take care of you. Like, if I have to step out of the building, I know that my teachers are going to cover it and they're going to be fine, because when they need to leave or they need support at home or outside in their personal lives, that I'm going to be there for them. And when I need it, they're going to be there for me. I would say as a parent of a visually impaired or blind child, it's really tough. I've found that there's two categories of people. There's moms and dads and families who really lean into having a child with a disability, and no judgment there. It's just not the parent I am. I am the parent who, my husband's very embarrassed at beeper ball games because I'm screaming at our blind son to run faster, because he can run fast and he's fully capable of it. He better start running faster and get to that goal. And so it's like, you can be that parent who leans into it, and that's fine. Or you can be that parent who pushes your child to be the best that they can be. And being blind or visually impaired does not mean that you cannot attend a school with other sighted children. It does not mean that you cannot participate in sports. It just means that you have to figure out how that team is going to make it accessible. And don't be afraid to ask. Like, so many times I was so afraid to be like, oh, we can't go to this birthday party because I don't know how that's going to be accommodated for him. And we missed a couple birthday parties. And then I was like, I'm only hurting him. I need to be like, how can we make this accommodating for him? And it's uncomfortable sometimes. And just having to like push that comfort. and just deciding how you want your child to live their life and how you can support them in living that life. And for non-for-profit, find a really good grant writer, a really good person who can apply for the grants and write the grants, because it is, especially with all the funding that's been cut, it is cutthroat right now. So find someone that is really good at getting public funding and funds, or someone that's really good at asking for money and being like, hey, can you please donate?
That is a skill in itself, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Don't be afraid to ask. What are they going to say? No. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the worst that could happen. But yeah, and just take the chance. Don't be scared to do it. You can always go back to working for someone else. Like, there's always a job available working for someone else. So,
Blair, this has been awesome having you on the business growth journey.
It's great. I mean,
it's incredible just to hear, like, where you started and, your mindset of, growing through each opportunity, and, none of it's easy, and it's awesome to have you on and sharing your story.
Thanks. I think the next podcast we'll do stories from preschool.
That could be interesting. that could be really interesting.
Call in if you think this was your child.
Awesome. Well, Blair, thank you so much for having you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
And we look forward to hearing more about the continued success.